The Supreme Court unanimously fails to consider the safety of the abortion drug mifepristone. And a Minnesota high school girl speaks out after being forced to share a bathroom with a boy. Hi, I'm Grace Lawrence, and I'm here with my co-host, Moses Brattrud. Welcome back to another episode of the Family Beacon podcast. Remember, we come out with episodes every Friday, and without further ado, Moses, let's jump into our first story. Can you tell us more about what the Supreme Court has been up to recently?
Yes, Grace. So on June 14th, the Supreme Court released a unanimous opinion in the FDA versus Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine case. And unfortunately, that decision did not go the way we wanted it to. It was a unanimous decision, as I said. And I will read from a National Review piece summarizing the decision, because although it didn't go the way we wanted it to, it leaves the door open for future cases that might really consider the merits of and the dangers of the abortion drug mifepristone.
Yeah.
Because although this was a loss, it didn't actually consider the merits of the dangers of that drug. So I'll just give you a quick summary for our listeners. So last week in FDA versus Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, the Supreme Court unanimously declined to reach the merits, finding that the plaintiffs, pro-life medical associations, and individual doctors challenging the FDA's 2016 and 2021 rule changes on mifepristone have no Article 3 standing. Recall that this case is not about the availability of mifepristone, but a challenge to specific rule changes that eliminated safety precautions to protect women, something easy to forget amid the typically sensationalized headlines that come from overwhelmingly pro-abortion media outlets. We're certainly very familiar with that. But in a decision written by Justice Brett Kavanaugh, the court declined to review the substantive issues because it considered the standing question answered by the fact that the doctors do not prescribe, manufacture, sell, or use the drug. Rather, they have, quote, objections to mifepristone being prescribed and used by others, unquote. The, quote, FDA has not required the plaintiffs to do anything or to refrain from doing anything, unquote. The justices did not find compelling the plaintiffs' causation theories based on what the court called downstream economic injuries. It gets a little technical there. One thing that's notable from this decision, National Review says, is that the court went out of its way to underscore the importance of conscience rights and say that existing, quote, federal law fully protects doctors against being required to provide abortions or other medical treatment against their consciences, unquote. So this is really important. National Review continues, given that the record shows that the doctors had to complete abortions at least a dozen times. They were forced to do so. Hospitals can no longer hide behind specious legal arguments to strong-arm doctors contrary to their consciences. So, Grace, there is still hope that in the future, the Supreme Court or Congress will take action to restrict the availability of the abortion drugs, which, as we've discussed many times here, can be harmful to women and, of course, are fatal to a growing child. I want to get your thoughts on that. But first, I want to say it's going to be an extremely busy couple of weeks for the Supreme Court. In fact, they have 21 opinions that they'll probably deliver within the next few weeks before the term is done. And so we can expect probably 5 or 6 opinions this week, probably after we film the podcast, and then more in the coming weeks. And there's a couple that we want to flag for people. There's going to be a big gun rights case, U.S. versus Rahimi. There's going to be another abortion case, Moyle versus United States. I've also heard that called Idaho versus United States, and that's a case we discussed a few weeks ago with Renee Carlson, which is about the EMTALA law about emergency medical treatment and whether abortion can be considered part of that. So that's a case that we're watching closely, and you'll be hearing more from us on that. But Grace, you are, I think, really passionate about the fact that it's extremely dangerous that over the past few years, more and more abortions are being done with the medication. And there are so many safety risks there. There are, everyone knows that there are health risks, severe health risks, if women take that drug too late in pregnancy. And to the woman, that is, it's always health risks for the child. And I could go on there, but these are things that I've come to know because of your advocacy against that medication, along with others. So I'm wondering, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth reiterating to our audience, Moses, the fact that one of the reasons that the abortion pill is so deadly is because, like you say, if a woman takes it too late, then she can hemorrhage, which is losing a lot of blood, and potentially die from that loss of blood. And take into account that a lot of times these abortion pills are being prescribed for women in states where abortion is not legal, or it's not legal up to a certain point. And so these women are doing telehealth appointments, which, it's kind of like a Zoom call, and there is a health professional on the call. But a lot of times, they will, every time when there's a telehealth appointment, they're not performing an ultrasound. So they're not 100% sure exactly how many weeks the woman may be. So let's say a woman thinks, okay, I'm 10 weeks pregnant, but it turns out she's actually 18 weeks pregnant, or 10 or 12 weeks pregnant even. And she's taking the abortion pill at a later point than she really should. That can cause serious harm to the mother.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's worth pointing out. Something else that stood out to me about this ruling is, while I'm grateful that the court did go out of its way to underscore the importance of conscience rights, and just emphasizing that doctors have the right to decline to provide treatment for quote unquote treatment for abortions or other medical procedures that go against their conscience. It's interesting that they say that in response, kind of like as a middle ground or as a clarifying statement, when this whole case wasn't even about conscience rights necessarily. It was about protecting women from deadly abortion drugs, women and children, but especially women. So this whole statement doesn't really address what we were getting at to begin with, which is women are in danger from these drugs, especially when
Mm-hmm.
they're doing these telehealth appointments. So I do really hope that the Supreme Court takes a hard look at what they've done. And I hope that other states are able to continue to pass legislation that really does protect women and girls. Because ultimately, we should all agree with that. That should be a bipartisan belief that women and girls should be protected. It is
Absolutely.
ridiculous to me that the pro-abortion lobby won't agree with some basic health standards for protecting women from
Mm-hmm.
these drugs. And of course, they don't want to admit that because they don't want to admit that abortion is ever unsafe.
Right. Grace, I think that's an amazing point. As you've been talking, I've been thinking about the telehealth aspect of that, and I've been thinking
Mm-hmm.
about the experiences that my family has had with telehealth. And to my knowledge, we've had about 3 telehealth appointments in the last few years since it became a more widely available thing. The first one was during COVID, and I'm certainly really glad that we didn't have to go in. My wife had a bad cough, and so we were worried about that. The doctor really helped set our concerns to rest. It was not necessarily a cough that would have been typical of COVID, and he said, "Get this over-the-counter medication," and it did help. Then we've had in the last year, we've had 2 appointments with my daughter, and both for ear complaints. And it was really interesting. The first time, it was really like, this is so frustrating. The first time, it took 10 minutes. They like pretended kind of to look at her ear over the camera, and then they said, "Okay,
Oh
here's
my
your
goodness.
antibiotic. Goodbye." You know.
Yep.
And so that's not great, but we did get what we thought would, treat her. And I seem to recall that it helped. But then the next time we went on the same exact portal that's available through our health insurance. It's a very low rate, which is kind of part of it's always available, which is part of the reason we did that rather than going to the doctor. And we kind of expected the same thing to happen. But instead, they were like, well, okay, she may or may not have that, but actually, we don't treat ear infections and you have to go to a doctor. And so it's
What?
completely crazy because we
Yeah.
had just done that like 5-6 weeks previously. And so both of those things, I think, like prescribing a drug without a real diagnosis or without a real examination and like not doing anything are indicative of the problems that telehealth
Hmm.
still faces. I'm certainly glad it's available in some cases. If I have something like visibly wrong with me, like, let's say I have a huge gash or something, and they can look at it and be like, you need stitches. Like if I was like, don't tough this one out, just go in, you need stitches. Or maybe they'll say, no, just put the bandage on that, clean it up. Maybe they tell me how to clean the wound or something. But then when we're talking about the abortion drug, as you've said, we're not talking about cleaning a wound or an antibiotic for an ear infection. We're talking about a medication which, if prescribed wrongly, can lead to serious hemorrhage and death. This is proven. It's in the medical literature. This is not a pro-life propaganda point. And we're talking about medication that kills a child. There's
Hmm.
so many moral and ethical things there. And I just think the telehealth aspect just makes it so much worse. So
Yeah.
thank you for mentioning that, because we're out on the skinny branches of the abortion industry, and things are not looking good. It really there's no evident care for women. There's certainly no evident care for the safety and health of women, for care for them if they have complications, which are very common with this drug. So I'll get off my soapbox there. I appreciative that you were able to speak more about that. And now, speaking of things where it seems something that seems so clear cut. Do not prescribe abortion pills over the computer, and yet it's being done every day.
Hmm.
Another thing that's being done just flagrantly and in the face of good sense and public opinion and morality and all these things is that we still have this problem where men are using women's bathrooms and changing facilities. Men are entering women's sports teams. Men are taking, I think I saw that this year or last year, 5 state track and field titles that were meant for women meant for women and girls went to boys and men. And that's just indicative, like, there's 50 states, and of those, there were going to be 50 statewide female champions. 5 of them had their spots taken from them by men. But Grace, you're going to tell us about an incident of this happening, of specifically a restroom case right here in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's right, Moses. It really is ridiculous to think that women fought for so long first to be allowed to enter the universities, and then we won that battle, and then we fought again so hard to be able to have the right to vote, and again won that battle, and then here we are, and it's 2024, and apparently women can't even have their own bathrooms, which not only is just stupid, it's unsafe. So let's talk about
Absolutely.
how it's unsafe and how it's making teenage girls here in our state uncomfortable, and rightly so. Um, so recently, an anonymous 16-year-old girl, schoolgirl, she was forced to share private spaces, such as a bathroom, with males under a public school transgender policy, which is not surprising whatsoever. But that policy says that girls deserve. So basically, she said that, quote, "It's really uncomfortable because I was in gym class and I was just about to change, but then I heard this voice and I was like, that does not sound right. So I look and it's a male." That, I can't imagine how terrifying that would be. This poor girl, like, she's just minding her own business in the bathroom and she hears this boy's voice
Mm-hmm.
and looks, and there he is. So this girl, she's a rising junior at the Stewartville High School, and she was asked to remain anonymous, or she asked to remain anonymous just because she wanted to be able to speak freely on this issue without repercussion, especially, I'm assuming, at her school, which sounds like it is not prioritizing the rights or safety of women and girls. So the girl didn't just stop here. She just didn't just speak out to the news. She actually took this internally and tried to resolve it in her own hands. So she talked to her school principal about feeling uncomfortable about changing in the locker room with men around, with boys around. And this is what really boils my blood, Moses. The principal told her that students can, quote, be whoever they want to be, and that they're making sure that transgender identifying students are comfortable and are not seeing what they're doing and not seeing what they're doing to us. And she said that they're not prioritizing how girls feel. And what really gets me here is that this principal is saying that the comfort of boys is more important than the safety and privacy of girls, which again, it's crazy that it's 2024
Mm-hmm.
and that this kind of misogyny is not only allowed but is celebrated in Minnesota schools. Moses, did you have a thought here?
I just two things. I mean, it's just crazy that that is how the principal addressed the issue. Not, from
Mm-hmm.
this write up, no sympathy was given to this young woman who is scared, who had a really uncomfortable experience. And let's be honest, like, the principal should have at least admitted this is an uncomfortable experience. I'm sorry, this happened on the principal's watch. If something bad happens at a school, the buck stops with the principal and the school board and the people in authority, right? And it's just ridiculous. And it's
Yeah.
just, I love and respect teachers, but it sounds so didactic, like this, the principal saying, "Oh, you poor ignorant girl, don't you understand that transgender people need to be made comfortable? And the way that we need to
Yeah.
make them comfortable is by letting them use your bathroom. So
And
sorry,
locker room.
bye." Yeah,
Yes.
it's absolutely, like, so inappropriate. And just the very trivial fact is that this high school, Stewartville High School, that's where my grandparents met, way, way, way back in about
Wow.
1951, 1952, maybe 1950. So I think that's kind of crazy that, you know, uh, I won't speak for them. They're still around, but I think they would be very surprised to hear that this is happening in their school. And of course, it would have been not just like weird, but unimaginable that that would happen in 1950. And the kid who did this would be the one in trouble with the principal, right? And so it is just insane how
Mm-hmm.
how the pendulum swings. And I think, one of the most important things we're doing, Grace, at this organization is really trying to swing that pendulum back, trying to change hearts and minds so that they see, no, when you have people of the opposite sex using the wrong bathrooms, getting on the wrong sports teams, that's not just a case of, oh, well, we need to create accommodations so that people are comfortable and so that they can feel good in the skin they're in. It sounds like an Avon ad, and like, no, 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 this is wrong. We need to have accommodations that would help people be comfortable without burdening other people. So, if I can make this a little bit more complicated, because we shouldn't shy away from the difficult things here. I recently heard a very, really sad thing that happened, I think, in Hopkins High School, where a transgender person who was a man dressed as a woman, or a boy dressed as a girl, was using the men's bathroom at the Hopkins High School. And so, I mean, I think we can say, like, it is preferable that male students should use the male restroom, right? Unfortunately, in this case, another student tracked down the student who is transgender and attacked him and called him all sorts of slurs and put him in the hospital. And that is obviously not appropriate. It's horrifying that that happened to that student.
Mm-hmm.
And this high school does have single stall restrooms which are available. Those can be used by a transgender student or anyone who feels uncomfortable in the larger restrooms, or a disabled student, etc. And it just seems like, for if you ever think that your safety, for any reason, if you ever think that your safety is an issue, um, use the single cell bathroom. Like, you can lock the door. It's a safer space for you if you really feel at risk. But that being said, I'm not saying that we should make the bathrooms a free for all. Anybody can use it, any bathroom. I'm saying women should feel safe in the bathrooms that they can use, because they should be confident that there are no male students, et cetera, in those spaces.
Yeah.
And if for any reason anyone feels uncomfortable, they should use the single cell bathrooms if those are available. And I generally support single stall bathrooms being available. So that's maybe a little bit off topic, but this is we don't have to overcomplicate this issue, but we need to make it clear, like, nobody is being forced to not use the bathroom. Nobody is having opportunities taken away from them when we say that sports and changing facilities and bathrooms are open to people of the same biological sex. Men's sports for men, women's sports for women. And same with bathrooms and changing facilities. Okay, step off my soapbox. Thank you, Grace, for
Yeah.
sharing that story.
Yeah,
We
I actually would like to share a few other things
Oh, please go ahead.
on that story, Moses. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to say something, because I heard your tone of disgust, rightly so, and didn't want to, bowl you over with continuing. But one thing that I think is a little bit heartbreaking is that this girl also shared that she's not only scared about boys pretending to be girls, but she's also scared of these boys being in her shared spaces and either touching her or taking cell phone photos of her in bathrooms or locker rooms. And that's crushing, because in locker rooms, that's where you're changing into your other clothes, it's where you're using the bathroom, it's where you're showering. And she said that she's not the only one. She says that her friends also feel unsafe about having to share these spaces. She said that anything can happen and that you're technically not a female, even if you do transition. And so it's just not right. So I think that's crushing that these girls, these 16-year-old girls, and even younger, have to worry about this. One other thing I did want to mention is that in this same article, a mom of 3 spoke up. She's in the same district. She said that she's worried about her 11-year-old daughter being relentlessly, quote unquote, conditioned to accept biological males in female spaces and to see gender as a choice. She shares that her 2 teens know that it's absolute nonsense. And she says that's why the activists are trying to push this material into younger grades, to disrupt a children's sense of gender and sexuality. And it's absolutely correct. It's on point. The mom shares that women have always had to fight for their own spaces. And she says that today's girls need to be conditioned to believe that today's girls are being forced to believe that they should be comfortable with sharing bathrooms and locker rooms with males. And that's unacceptable. So I'm just proud of this mom and this 16-year-old girl for speaking up and getting loud, because that's how change is going to happen. It's when brave, normal people yourself, Moses, this mom and daughter, that's when change happens. That's when people begin to listen. So the more that people do this, the more the alarm bell will be rung and the more change we're going to see. So 2 really powerful stories for you guys this week. Since we do have time this week to talk about what we're reading, Moses, I would love for you to share with our audience what is on your Goodreads list this week.
Definitely. It feels like it's been forever since we have done this. And I am now on the 17th volume of the Patrick O'Brien Master and Commander series, the inspiration for the movie Master and Commander. And yeah, there are 20 books and I'm on 17. So I'm getting near the end. It's still so good. It's just food for my soul. I can't express how much I love them. And so I'm already thinking, like, what am I going to do when I'm done with this? I think I also might have mentioned that I started Bleak House the last time we talked by Charles Dickens, because I've
Yes.
been reading it for a while now, and I'm only halfway done. It's very long. And I have to say, it's getting better. It's getting better and better. There's a
Awesome.
couple things that really annoy me about Dickens. Just the characters. He has some great characters, and then he has characters, and it's like, why do you exist? Like, I was thinking about this particular character that was just, I was listening on my run this morning, and I was just like, this is such an annoying character. This character could have been removed from the book, and no one would miss him. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
was like, and that's yeah, and this is a 1,000 page book, so yeah, like we could have done without a couple of these characters. But that being said, with that length, Dickens is able to create a very complex, very interesting and immersive narrative, which in this case becomes a murder mystery. And I'm like a little bit more than halfway, and it's only just now becoming a murder mystery. So there's a lot of throat clearing, but you know what? It's a pleasure to read, and I'm along here for the journey. One more thing, my book group, we picked a little bit of a left field choice, um, Tartuffe or L'Imposture, a 1664 comedy by the French playwright Molière. I don't know
Wow.
anything about it. Um, Other than I see some good reviews from my friends on Goodreads. It's only 180 pages, so I'm excited to kind of stream through that and check something out that I've never. I don't think I've read a book from the 17th century ever, unless it was like religious, or if like maybe Don Quixote is from this. Yeah, okay, Don Quixote is from that time period. I've read that. So so yeah, so I'm excited. I love having a good book during the summer. What about you, Grace? What's on your shelf?
Yeah, well, I actually read that comedy in high school, and I can't remember if I liked it or not. So that's a bummer. So I might have to go back and read it again. Um,
Let me
I feel
know.
like when I can't remember, it's probably because it didn't make much of an impression. But it could be great. Um, it could have been one of those that I skimmed. But I am currently rereading Little Women by Louisa Alcott, which of course is a classic. I feel like your wife
Absolutely.
would probably loves that book. She's
Oh
so
yeah.
well read. It's just great. I mean, the only like downside, if there is a downside, is the book is definitely a bit transcendentalist as far as theology is concerned. But that's to be preferred over the worldview of a lot of books these days. I've always liked the second half better when the girls are more grown up. But I finished that book this morning actually before work, and it was great. Always a classic. And then I'm also reading Friedman's Fables by Friedman, and
Oh,
that is an interesting book.
yeah, I heard about that.
Uh I'm only like two fables in, but yeah, it's pretty fascinating. He is a pretty brilliant mind, and Joe Rigney recently wrote a book, kind of like a Christian take on those fables.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's been interesting so far. And then I'm also almost done with the last Harry Potter book. Again, a reread, but I read
Fun.
the series every summer. They just never get old. Love them. Yeah.
That's so great. I shall I tell you my controversial Little Women opinion?
But of course, is it that Joe should have married Lori?
Yes, yep, you guessed it. In fact, I wonder if we've talked about this. I think they should have just waited a few years. They were obviously not mature, but it always struck me that it was just so weird. Like, who's this guy coming out of nowhere? This older German guy, and it's like, who are
Yep.
you? Like it's just a
Uh-huh.
strange.
Yeah, my take is that like okay, when I was younger, I thought that Joe and Lori absolutely should have gotten married. Like they're just so perfect. Like they have that cute friendship and everything. But rereading it now, I feel like that Joe was right to turn him down because one, she just didn't love him, and then two, her parents said that they thought that they weren't a good match. So I feel like if her parents were like, "No, we agree with you, not a good match." However, I agree that the old guy, Professor Bear, is weird. And I think that's because Elcott originally wanted Joe to be single and never marry. And I think that would have been more satisfactory of an ending. I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
ending we were expecting because Joe was always saying, I'll never marry. The reason she changed it is because her editors said that the book wouldn't sell unless all the girls got married, which is kind of silly. And I don't think it would be true. So yeah, I think they should have not had Professor Bear, and I think that it would have been a more satisfactory ending. But I think Amy and Lori do suit each other well. Now, maybe you're right. If they had waited till they were older, maybe it would have worked out with Joe. But they were so similar and both had such feisty tempers that it's hard to say if it would have worked out. But I sympathize with your viewpoint.
Huh. Well, I feel somewhat justified now. I had no idea that
Yeah.
the publisher inserted that because it
Mm-hmm.
always felt like such an afterthought.
Weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I sure love talking about these books, and I know our audience enjoys those updates as well. And now it's time to close this episode, as we do every week when we remember. I realized that I did not close our recent episode with Aaron Rand. I did not include a verse at the end, which I was like, shoot. But this week we're remembering. I remembered. And our verse today is from 1 Corinthians 6. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your body. This is obviously a famous verse, and I saw this and I immediately thought of these two stories. The story of women who dishonor their body by taking poison that induces an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
That is dishonoring your body. That is, your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. That is allowing child sacrifice to happen in the temple. It is completely, it's a horrible thing. But there is repentance and forgiveness for women who go that route, of course. And another way of dishonoring your body is to pretend that you're something you're not. If you're a man, to pretend that you're a woman, to pretend that you are able to access a girl's restroom, a girl's changing facility, a girl's sports team. That is dishonoring your body. You are pretending that your body is something that it is not. And our culture has such a problem accepting that we have been made a certain way and that we need to lean into the way that we were made and not try to fight it. And it's just, there's so many aspects of that, but abortion and gender ideology are just two of the most powerful in our culture right now. So on a positive note, as Christians, we are called to remember that our bodies are temples, and there's so many things, so many ways in which we can live that out in our lives that I can't get into them all now. But let's just remember, folks, that we were created by God in His image. We were bought with a price. We are valuable. Our bodies have value, and always remember that when we die, and when we go to heaven, that's not the end. The end is the new heavens and the new earth, where we will receive a new glorious body, which will be, sort of like the perfect version of this body, not some special angelic body, but the perfected version of this. So we're not going to be disembodied spirits. We're not going to all look the same. We're going to keep our individuality, and there's, I think, so much to be grateful for in that, and so much to praise God for. So, folks, thank you guys for coming along with Grace and I as we discuss the stories that matter this week, getting you the facts so that you can stand for truth. This has been another episode of the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council. Thank you so much for tuning in.